Good morning, everyone. I hope you've been having a wonderful week and I hope you're having a great start to February. I've got quite a chatty vlog for you today. First, I thought I'd answer some of your FAQs. I've been getting a lot of the same questions. So I put a call out on my Instagram if any of you had any questions, and a lot of the same ones come up again and again. There were some for my mum as well, so I'm going to ask her a couple questions when we have lunch together. I'm sharing a really nice winter soup recipe for you that's kind of a family favourite. So at lunchtime I'll make that and I'll show you how I make it. And then this afternoon I'm also going to take you through my February to be read pile. But anyway, let's get started with the FAQs. So let me see. Okay, yes, so the first one is, where is your beautiful wallpaper from? So everyone always asks me about the wallpaper in my bedroom. You'll see that later in this video if you haven't before. And yes, it is really stunning. It's from the 1930s. It was hand painted then. It was just part of my bedroom. We rent this house, so it's got nothing to do with me or my choice, but it was already in that room, which of course just made me fall in love with that bedroom completely. It is really stunning, and considering how old it is in pretty good shape. So I really prize it. Okay, the next question. What jobs did you do in the past? A lot of people ask me about like what I was doing before YouTube and all of that. I did a lot of things. I did a degree in linguistics, then I did a graduate diploma in law, which was a postgraduate degree. But I really didn't enjoy law at all, and I spent some time wondering what on earth to do. I thought about publishing. I worked in Persephone books for a while. I did a lot of odd jobs while I was at uni as well, and also whilst I was working like part-time at Persephone, I was doing other things. So I've like nannied in my time. I worked at Harrods department store in London. I've also worked in in a vintage bookshop in London. I've worked in a garden shop in London. I've done lots of retail, lots of nannying. Then I thought about teaching and I got a job as a TA. So I worked as a TA, which was intense, but I enjoyed it. And so then I got my PGCE, so I'm a qualified primary school teacher, and I worked as a teacher for years as well. And then I dropped to part-time teaching when I started my blog, and I knew I wanted to pursue a much more creative career. Teaching sadly wasn't as creative as I thought it would be, and I really started having the goal to work for myself. So I dropped to part-time teaching. I did part-time in like one school for a while, and then I went to sort of supply teaching so I could manage my hours myself even more. That was a lot of hard work. If you're a teacher, you know what supply teaching is like. Going to different schools every day is pretty exhausting, but I was just really motivated with everything I was trying to build up outside of that. And then I could drop my hours more, and I picked up other things like editing, ghost blogging, wrote some articles, so sold some photos, kind of anything that I could do. Now I'm really devoting more and more time to YouTube, which is really exciting for me. And you can see that because I am producing more content this year, and I was trialing in January how much I could manage to do 2 vlogs a week, but I definitely want to keep going with that. So thank you so much for all of your support and telling me how much you've been enjoying the vlogs, and I really look forward to keeping that going over this year with 2 vlogs a week. So yeah, I mean, long story short is I did a lot before this. So my next question is, how did you and your mum forge such a great relationship? So it's lovely because so many people comment about the wonderful relationship that I have with my mum and how much you enjoy seeing that in my vlogs, which is lovely. And I am really lucky to have such a fabulous mum and that we get on so well. She's a wonderful person. I mean, I think the main reason that I get on with her so well is because it would be really hard not to get on with such a lovely, sunny-tempered, just fabulous soul. She's so special. I know you can all see that as well. And she's just a really brilliant mum. We've always bonded over our love for books. She's always been there for me all through my life over any hard times. She's been celebrating all of my good times too. She's just always been there. And she's just my number one friend and my number one support. I actually get a bit emotional. But no, so we've always been close. And I was homeschooled for quite a few years of my childhood because I was pursuing dance. I really wanted to be a ballerina, and so that I could attend more ballet classes, my mum homeschooled me for a number of years. So that made us close as well. She also almost died when I was 3 years old. She got cancer and it very nearly took her life. And my earliest memory is of seeing her in hospital when I was 3. And thank goodness she survived it and is fine, and I feel so lucky for that. But it did mean that she has difficulty with movement. She's not very mobile. She had an operation that removed most of her left leg. So she's also needed help from me growing up. And from a young age, I also learned to do things around the house. I learned to cook and to clean and to help with laundry. You know, I'd do my parents' laundry, I'd do my laundry. Growing up, my dad was really, really busy, always working a lot. So I would always help out my mum a lot around the house when I was growing up. And I think that also made me a lot more mature from a young age. So I've always been a bit of an old soul, a bit of a mature sort of person, even when I was young. And I think that helped with me getting on with my mum so well and with so many of her friends so well. I always got on really well with older people. I got on with people my own age too, but I've also always been very comfortable with older people as well. So yes, I just feel so blessed to have such a lovely mum, that we have such a wonderful relationship, and I get to live with someone so lovely. And then another question, oh yeah, would you tell me about your life growing up outside Britain? This comes up a lot too. So I only moved to the UK when I was 18, almost 19, and I started university in London. I was born in Regina, Saskatchewan. My dad is Canadian. My mum and her family actually moved to Canada from Dorset when my mum was 15. So she lived in Canada for a number of years too, and she met my dad there, and they got married, and they ended up moving to the States and then to France, to the French-Swiss border. My dad is a physicist and he travelled a lot, moved a lot for work when I was growing up. But my mum went back to Canada to have me. So I was born in Regina, but then they moved back to France when I was just a month old or something. And then I lived in France for the first 5 years of my life. I went to the International School of Geneva, which is obviously in Switzerland. So we lived in France, but I went to school in Switzerland. Then we moved to California, lived there for 5 years. Then we moved to New York, lived there for 5 years. Then we moved back to the French-Swiss border, and I went back to the international school. I did the IB, which is the International Baccalaureate, and then I went to London. So I think people generally now can't tell that I wasn't born in the UK. I used to have more of a mid-Atlantic accent a bit, but I think that's faded over time. And I'm always so thankful I had that kind of international background. I got to move, travel a lot and live in amazing places. And then final question, when did your passion for reading start? Which book triggered it? A lot of people ask me about my reading habits, but again, I've already done a Q&A on that, so I'm going to link that in the description box down below so you can check out all of my answers to a lot of those common questions as well. But people still keep asking, you know, have you always loved to read? What really triggered your passion for reading? I've loved to read for as long as I can remember. It's just always been a part of who I am. I've loved audiobooks from as long as I can remember too. I remember listening to abridged versions of Black Beauty and Ballet Shoes when I was like 5 years old and loving it. And I mean, I really credit my mum to my love for reading. She read to me so much as a child and I, you know, adored that. And she always introduced me to books. You know, she bought me books. My nanny, my grandmother, who lived in the UK, always sent books for me as well. Even though she wasn't a reader, she really encouraged my reading, which was lovely, and she'd send parcels of books. And I really loved Enid Blyton as a child, so I raced through all of the famous 5, the Secret 7, the adventure stories, Marley Towers, St. Clair's, I mean, just all of them. And I think that really is what made me like a lifelong reader, is because I got so hooked on those series. And I think children reading series is so important because it keeps them reading, keeps them wanting to read the next book and keep going in that series. And that really just triggered a passion for reading for me. And then I moved on to the chalet school books, which are about a boarding school in Austria. They were written from the early 1900s through to sort of the 1960s, around that kind of time. And I loved them because they reminded me of the international school that I went to. They had a real international feel to them, and they felt like a celebration of Europe, of internationalism. And that was a message that really spoke to me. And again, there are like 58 books in that series, so that really kept me reading. And that's also what started my love for collecting books, because most of them were out of print. So I read the first few that were in print, but then loads were out of print. So I started wanting to collect them, and my mum helped me with that. But anyway, those are some of the FAQs that I get a lot. I hope you enjoyed hearing about some of my life and answers to those questions. Thanks again for sending them. I'm going to get on and make some lunch now. I'll show you the soup that I'm making, and then whilst I'm having lunch with Mum, I'll ask her a couple of the questions that keep coming up that people ask her as well. As I said, I'm making a favourite winter soup today. This is an apple and celeriac soup that I think is really delicious. It's a favourite of mine and my mum's, and it's one that we make quite often, and it's really very simple, so I'm just going to talk you through it a bit today. So I've already chopped up 1 clove of smoked garlic and 2 shallots. I'm going to just put a splash of olive oil in the saucepan, and I'm just going to fry the shallots and the garlic lightly until the shallots start to go a bit translucent and everything has softened. You don't want to overcook the garlic, but I'm just going to get them going. And then I've already prepared the apples. I've chopped them up, and I peeled and chopped up a celeriac. So that's ready to go. And I'm going to just blitz them in the food processor. But let's start with the shallots and the garlic. So I'm going to pop them in. I've just got them going on a fairly gentle heat. I don't want to overcook it too much. Already starts to smell nice though. I'm quite hungry today, and I do love a lovely warming bowl of soup for lunch. Okay, so those are getting going, and I'm just going to add the apple and the celeriac into the food processor and let it do all of the hard work. And as always, I'll be putting the recipe for this in the video description box, so make sure you look there if you want to make this. I'll be just writing it out in the description box so you can see it there. Okay, I'm going to chop these up. Okay, that looks about right. If you don't have a food processor, then you could grate them, but that is a lot more work. So that's why I like to use the food processor. So I'm going to lift that out and add this in with the shallots and the garlic. Celeriac and apples are just always on hand this time of year. So this just makes such a great winter soup, and I really love the flavour of this soup as well. It's really delicious. Okay, so I've added in all of the apple and celeriac, and now I've got some homemade chicken stock. Mum did a roast chicken over the weekend, and so we've got some delicious stock made from it, and you pour in the stock just so it covers the apple and the celeriac. So I'm going to pop this in, and I think I need just a little bit more. So I'm going to add this in too. There, I think that's right. And then I've tied together a little bunch of thyme. I love this herb. It's always one of my very favourites to use in cooking. So I'm going to pop that in, and I fish it out at the end. That's why I've tied all of the stalks together. And then I'm just going to bring this to the boil and let it simmer for about 30 minutes or so, because it all has to cook. And then once that's ready, I'm going to get a handheld blender and just blitz it so you get a nice smooth soup at the end, which is my favourite kind. My mum developed this sort of recipe. She first had it in France, and she kind of created her own, and then she taught me how to make it, and it's just become a real favourite winter soup of ours. So it's nice to hand it on to all of you. Okay, let's get this simmering away for a while, and then I'll be back. Okay, so I've just got the soup off the hob now. I've fished out the thyme, and this is looking and smelling lovely. Everything's nice and cooked through. So what I'm going to do, because I've found that it can make a right mess if I just sort of go straight in with this into the soup, I'm actually going to ladle it into a jug first, and then I'm going to blend it in the jug, just because I personally find that's a lot easier and less messy. Obviously you don't have to do it this way though, but it's a way that works for me. So just getting the soup into here, and then I'll blitz away. Okay, so here's the first round. I'm just going to pop this into a separate saucepan. And then if I need to, I can always reheat the soup in there. But I'll just ladle in the next round. Okay, so that's all blended. I'm going to pop it in. And then I can just season to taste this with some salt and pepper. I can pop it back on the hob just for a little bit, just to make sure it's all nicely warmed through before we sit down to eat. I'm really looking forward to our lunch today. So here we are, ready for lunch. The soup smells very good.
It looks very lovely. I always love this soup. One of my favourites.
Yes,
simple but a standard.
Yeah, it makes a really nice winter lunch, and we've got some lovely homemade bread as well, and a bit of goat's cheese and some smashed avocado that
what a treat.
Needed to use up. So yeah.
Well, that's the best lunches, is when it's bits of things you've got left over, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice, honey.
Let's try a bit. So nice on a cold winter day.
And you'll approve because it's that lovely, smooth, creamy.
Yes, I don't like
soup. bitty soups she
Yeah,
used to
like
call them when
chunky
she was
soups.
little.
Yes, and like smooth soups.
I even love the
pureed ones.
minestrone or something when I'd make it. I'd always take your section and just blitz it to bits.
Yeah.
So that you could have it as smooth,
Yes,
crunchy vegetable
I'm not normally
soup.
fussy at all
No, you're
about
not.
food.
No,
That's just something.
just something
Bit of a eccentricity.
You're allowed the odd one, aren't you?
Yeah. So I have some questions for you.
Okay, I'll do my best.
Oh, you'll be great. So some of the most common ones that people sent in that were directed to you.
Okay.
So I thought we could talk about them whilst having our lunch.
Sounds nice.
And the first one is, I would love to know some of your mum's favourite children's books. A lot of people wanted to know, about your passion for children's books and your favourite ones.
Well, I mean, I read a lot of children's books, and it's a great interest of mine. Everything from picture books, vintage books, modern day fiction written for children. I try and keep up with things. I'm really interested.
Do you think you read more children's books even than adult, or do you think it's about the same but you read as much
I'd read as much. I think it's probably maybe 60% adult, 40% children, but then I have months when I just read children's.
Yeah, that's
true.
So,
I suppose
kind
it's
of
very
depends,
hard
but you always read a lot.
Yeah. So I really love them, and favourites, well, in each one, I think for me right now, for instance, I'll read on a theme in children's books. So recently I've been looking at, I reread All of a Kind Family about in December, about the Jewish family in New York at the turn of the century. And that led me on to reading or rereading an Australian, more modern day classic, but it's brilliant, called The Family with Two Doors. Yes. And then I went into thinking, well, I'll reread The Silver Sword. Yeah. And I Am David. So that was a little theme for me. And of authors, I love things like Kitty Barnes. I love the Shelley books. I love the Abbey books. They're perhaps my favourite, by L.C.J. Oxenham. I mean, you know why I love those.
Yes, I do
so
too.
many. Yes. Yeah.
And then a lot of people wanted to know what's on your bedside table. Like what books?
Right now?
What books? Yeah, right now. What's on your bedside table? If you can remember.
Yeah, I'll try. Well, I'm in a bit of a idea with you where you wanted to do short form literature.
Yes, I'll be talking about that in a moment.
Yeah. And so I've got some short stories. So what I'm rereading is actually the collected stories of Catherine Ann Porter, because of course, which people might not know this, Miranda's definitely named over the Shakespearean heroine.
Yeah, Tempest, Miranda.
Yes, but I also love Miranda in some of Catherine Ann Porter's short stories, because actually her biographer.
I've never read the one.
No, you have to. There's quite a few actually, so you have to read them.
Yes, I will.
But actually, her biographer, Joan Givner, was my professor in Regina when I first started university. Lovely woman, and she wrote a biography of Catherine Ann Porter. I read them, I loved them, and I wanted to also use the name for you.
So you've got that on your bedside table.
I've got that. Yes, I've got Prayers from the Ark by Ruma Godden, because I wanted to have some poetry. And I love those poems. They're so funny. She's translated them from the French, I believe, but they're really, each animal tells its story in a poem is a prayer. Yeah. And it keeps to the actual animal's character. Yeah. So that's lovely. So, and of course I've got my Kindle where I'm right now reading Poison in the Pen.
Oh yes, so Patricia Wentworth.
Yes, absolutely. I'm wearing my Irish bog oak brooch, which I had made because it was inspired by Miss Silver.
I love that. Jewellery inspired by favourite detective. Oh, well, thank you for answering
my
those
pleasure.
questions. Yeah. And we're going to finish our lunch now, but then I'll be telling you about all of the books that I'm planning to hopefully read in February. So just before I tell you about my February to be read pile, I wanted to have a chat about Serious Readers, who are once again very kindly sponsoring this video. I've been using my Serious Light from Serious Readers for a few months now. I first got it in November, and it's really made such a wonderful difference to my reading life throughout all of winter. As you know, I love books, I read a huge amount, I especially read in the evenings, so obviously I read when it's very dark, especially in the winter. And I've found that my Serious Light has really helped to diminish eye strain. I've got terrible eyesight already, and because I live in a very old house too, we don't have a lot of sockets for lights and we don't have overhead lights in my bedroom or in the living room. So having such a great light has made a wonderful difference to my life. I've raved about it to family and friends as well. My dad bought one for himself, and then he bought one for my grandmother in Canada, and they've both been loving it too, so I think it's great. I've now got sort of 3 generations in my family using this light. But there's some key aspects about the light that make me love it a lot. I've got the high definition floor light, and I went with the cordless version, so I can carry this around, which I really love because it means I can have it upstairs in my bedroom when I want to, or downstairs in the living room, or just wherever I need a great light. Also, lights in the Serious Lights range feature daylight wavelength technology, which replicates daylight as closely as possible. So I feel like I'm reading in a wonderful pool of natural light, and that really matters to me because the light quality makes such a difference to how easily I'm able to read and how comfortable I am when reading. I also love that I can adjust the width of the beam of the light and the intensity of the light, so I get the perfect amount of light for me. But if you also are looking for a great reading light, then you'll be pleased to know that I have an offer code, which is SR222. So that's SR222. And that gives you free international shipping, and also if you use that offer code when you buy any light in the Serious Lights range, then you'll receive a free compact light which is worth £150, and it makes a really handy small lamp for like a side table or for a desk. I use mine all the time as well. So don't forget my offer code. I'll put all of the details in the description box down below, so you can check out Serious Readers if you'd like to. But now I'll move on to telling you about the books I'm hoping to read in February. Okay, so I've rearranged things a bit and I've got my stack of books that I would love to read in February. I'm not sure I'll be able to get to all of them, but I'll be able to pick and choose from this pile, and hopefully some of my choices might inspire you as well. So I thought, as February is such a short month, it would be fun to celebrate some short form literature in February. It's also a month of love and romance, so some of my picks have definitely reflected that as well. I've chosen 2 lovely poetry collections that celebrate love. This one I'm really excited by. I've already started dipping into it and I'm really enjoying it, and I think it will be lovely to have on my bedside table throughout February, just to kind of pick up whenever I feel like it. And this is the Ink Dark Moon. And it's a collection of poetry from 2 female Japanese poets, Ono no Komachi and Izumi Shikibu. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but it says, This book contains a collection of sexy, fleeting poems, more than 1,000 years old. And I think what's astonishing when you start to read them is actually how fresh and how modern so much of the poetry feels. It's generally all very short, just a few lines, and it really is so moving, a lot of it, and deals with many different aspects of love and of romance as well. So I'm really enjoying this already, and I know it'll be something I love to dip into throughout the month. And then I also got this collection of Shakespeare's sonnets, some of the greatest love poetry, I think. I love this cover, which is illustrated by, I think it's Clive Hicks Jenkins. Yes, it is Clive Hicks Jenkins. You can see the beautiful end papers as well, which I think are really special. And I love his artwork, so I was really excited to get a collection of Shakespearean sonnets that featured his artwork. And again, this will just make a lovely sort of bedside table read to pick up whenever I feel like it, or whenever I want to feel like I want a bit of Marion Dashwood inspiration in my life. I always think of her and her very romantic soul when I pick up a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets. And then, speaking of short form literature, I wanted to celebrate not only love poetry, but also short stories this month. And I've shown you this collection before. It's a new collection of Catherine Mansfield short stories. And I picked it up to read alongside this new biography of Catherine Mansfield that has come out. It's All Sorts of Lives by Claire Harmon, Catherine Mansfield and the Art of Risking Everything. And this is unusual in the way that it's structured, because Claire Harmon examines a short story that I think she views as having particular significance or relevance in Catherine Mansfield's life. So she sort of looks at her life through the lens of about 10 or so different short stories. And I knew that I wanted to read the short stories that she refers to in the biography kind of as I went through it. And this collection has all of the short stories that are mentioned in the biography. So this month I'd love to do this as a reading project, sort of reading some of Mansfield's short stories. I've read a lot of them already, but definitely not all of the ones mentioned in the biography. So I'm excited to read some new to me ones, and then kind of reading this biography at the same time. I think that will be very interesting. So those are on my list. And then I thought I would try a novella this month as well. Though with the length of this one, I think it's really like a slightly longer short story. It's very, very slight. But I bought this a while ago in Persephone Books. It's a book that they've raved about and really recommended. And so it's been on my bookshelf for ages. It's one I keep meaning to get to. And this month I'm definitely picking it up. And it's called Reunion. It's by Fred Ullman, and it's about two young boys in the 1930s in Germany. And it's about their friendship, but how the rise of Nazism affects that friendship. And I can't wait to read it. Like I said, I've just heard such good things about it that I'm excited to finally get to it this month. So this one is a definite. Another definite is, of course, the Comfort Book Club pick for this month, which is The Nonsuch by Georgette Heyer. This is just a sort of light and sparkling Regency romance. Georgette Heyer was definitely very inspired by Jane Austen with her writing, but she wrote her books in the sort of 1940s, 50s, 60s and onwards a bit, and she very much recreated her own sort of Regency England, but she did a lot of research into the time as well, and she uses so many slang phrases of the time. She looked up loads about fashion and the sort of carriages and all that sort of thing, all those details of the time, and she just created her own Regency world. And a lot of her characters are just very funny, and I like the light romances in these, and this is a favourite of mine. It's also for the most part entirely set in Yorkshire. And there's mention of Harrogate and Leeds and, you know, all the places that I go to now. So I'm really looking forward to returning to this one this month for a bit of romance in February. And then another light romance I'm looking forward to is The Agency for Scandal. This is the new Laura Wood book. I really like her YA books. I've raved in the past about A Sky Painted Gold, and all of her other ones I've read as well and really enjoyed them. So I'm excited for her latest. It's got beautiful cover design. I loved the spine on this. It's so attractive. And this one sounds really fun. It says, when hunting for secrets during the London season, then there is really only one place to go. Isabel Stanhope is keeping a lot of secrets. She's head over heels in love with a duke who doesn't know she exists. Her family's fortune is lost, and then there's her job at the Aviary, an investigative agency run by women that specializes in blackmailing powerful men. When Izzy's secret crush becomes embroiled in her most dangerous case yet, the two must work together to uncover a sinister plot, unmask a villain, and definitely not fall in love. That would create quite a scandal. So I was looking at Laura Wood's Instagram, and she said, I think, that this was the novel she's had the most fun writing so far, and it really means a lot to her. So I'm excited to read this one myself. And then another romantic book that I want to get to is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Soon Lin Tan. My mum has read this one and really enjoyed it, and I did start it, I think, kind of just before Christmas, and was enjoying it, but then I wanted to read a bit more kind of Christmassy seasonal reads at that point and set it aside, but I thought I'll pick it up again in February and enjoy it then. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this one as well. And then there are two books that I think I probably won't get to this month, but I'd like to. So who knows, if I have an amazing reading month, then I will manage to get to them, or they'll go into my kind of March reading. And that is another kind of paired reading. That's A Pin to See the Peep Show by F. Jennison Jesse. And this is a sort of fictionalized account of a true crime that happened in the interwar years, and this is kind of an examination of that, and it's called Au revoir now, Darlint, the letters of Edith Thompson, edited by Laura Thompson. So it says, 100 years ago on the night of 3rd October, a 32-year-old clerk named Percy Thompson was stabbed to death as he walked home to his suburban villa in Ilford. With him was his wife, 28-year-old Edith. His killer was Edith's lover, Frederick Bywaters, a merchant seaman aged 20. Bywaters was hanged for murder on 9th January 1923. So too was Edith Thompson. And in this book, Laura Thompson has gathered together all of these letters that Edith wrote to her husband that really sort of damned her in the eyes of the jury. And I believe this is the first time all the letters have been gathered together and analysed in one volume. And this, like I said, is a sort of fictionalised account of this crime and tragedy. So I think it would be an interesting experience to sort of read these two back to back. So we'll see if I get to those in February. I'm not sure if I'll manage, but I'd like to. Anyway, those are all of the books that I'd love to get to this month. Let me know if any of them catch your eye, if you fancy reading along with any of them yourselves, or what other books that you're looking forward to reading in February. I'd love to hear. But thank you so much for watching. Remember to check the video description box for all of the links to everything that I've mentioned in this video. And I hope you have a wonderful start to the weekend soon. Extra big thanks to those of you who pressed the super thanks button on my video this week. There have been some amazing super thanks this week. I've just been really blown away by your generosity and all of the kind words and comments. And like I said before, I was kind of trialing 2 vlogs a week in January, but I really intend to keep going with that. And your encouragement has meant so much to me. So thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you on Sunday. Goodbye.